Hello, my little Jimbos, Jimbobs, and Jimbopitas. So, I have made the follow up I said I would like a year ago. As come to find out, Little Nightmares 3 is actually coming, y'all. Like, it's actually on its way here. So, I am eating my words. At this point, it's totally old news, so I'm not gonna bore you guys with like details that y'all probably already know anyway after watching other YouTubers like It's Just Lord or Terrico or Super Horror Bro or what have you. So yeah, I won't bore you with the more technical details. Right now, I want to discuss the narrative, where it is, and then speculate on where it might go and what that could mean for the future of Little Nightmares. That being said, spoilers ahead. You've been warned. There is no second one. In a dark dystopian universe where all kinds of monstrous creatures thrive and murky, decaying buildings crumble all around, small children run amok, doing whatever it takes to live, even as they reckon with the thought, what if I don't make it? Little Nightmares' story is better known as it pertains to a little girl in a bright yellow raincoat, the one all of us know and for some of us still love as the girl called Six. 6 years old, 6 years missing, who knows? Nevertheless, Six leads the story of Little Nightmares, beginning with her adventure across a dank floating vessel called the Maw. Eventually, she escapes the Maw, defeating its mistress and wielding a power deadlier than before. From there, we have yet to know what exactly comes next for our protagonist, as Little Nightmares concludes with her standing upon the shore, staring out into the ocean, likely wondering to herself, what comes next for me? But that entry, Little Nightmares, is not where the story of the franchise begins. Rather, it begins with a girl in a bright yellow raincoat. Except, unlike Six, she has no name. The two only share a bright yellow raincoat. The girl with the yellow raincoat, which we'll shorthand to Yellow, finds herself stranded upon a strange islet after her hot air balloon crashes into the attic of a peculiar tower attached to an even stranger mansion. Traversing through the mansion alongside her occasional helper and later on partner in crime, it isn't long before Yellow finally makes it outside. After a close escape, she ends up falling off a cliff along with the Pretender. I shouldn't laugh. That's not funny. It's kind of funny. I'm sorry. Together, they fall to their uncertain demise, smashing into the rough waves and tall, jagged, pointy rocks. Yellow's partner in crime, a girl in plain white clothes and short, dark hair, watches the water until eventually there appears a bright yellow coat. This leads us to Little Nightmares 2. Little Nightmares 2 begins with a small boy with a bag on his head. Heaven knows why he has that bag on his head. And players soon learn his name to be Mono. Mono travels through the woods alone, but it isn't long before he ends up inside a seemingly desolate, run-down cottage. Wandering into the basement, he finds a girl locked in a room. Nothing but the moon shining through the window, lighting her frame. Freeing her, they flail through the woodlands as they're being chased by the hunter. And when they shoot him dead in the end, they decide to stick together until the near end of their journey through Pale City. Along the way, the girl in white ends up coming across a familiar item. A bright yellow raincoat. She wears it, and in this moment the players realize who they've been traveling with this whole time. This meek little girl. Well, she's not that meek actually when you get to the school, but this seemingly meek little girl in the white pajamas. Turns out she is the mightiest protagonist out of them all. Six. By the end of their shared story, Mono's fate is dark, and Six leaves him behind. Soon, as we get to see where she ended up, we see her staring at a TV, a shadow standing before her, and then a small flyer of this sort beside her, depicting a floating vessel in the ocean. The Maw. And that's basically the story regarding the game series thus far. Many of us believe that Little Nightmares 2 came after Little Nightmares, and some of us believed Very Little Nightmares wasn't canon at all. I know I sure didn't. For the longest, I was convinced that that was just, for lack of a better way to call it, a throwaway game. So I was just yeah, I don't think that's canon. But nevertheless, the actual order of the games, story-wise, is Very Little Nightmares. It is canon. Little Nightmares 2, and then Little Nightmares. Sprinkled between these game entries are other materials such as the original Little Nightmares comic book series by Titan Comics, and then more recently, as of 2021, the mobile comics that presumably take place between the events of Very Little Nightmares and Little Nightmares 2. There's also the latest mini-series produced by Bandai Namco Europe called The Sounds of Nightmares, which is free to watch on YouTube. It has 6 episodes, and I believe it's finished by now. From what I've learned regarding its status as canon or otherwise, it isn't canon to the Little Nightmares storyline per se, but it definitely expands the universe in the same way as the 2021 digital comics. That said, there's limited information about what the story of Little Nightmares 3 is, which, good or bad thing. Glass is half full, half empty. It's really just a matter of perspective, I think, here. The official website reads, "Follow the journey of Lo and Alone as they search for a path that could lead them out of the nowhere." There's a little more after describing the setting of Little Nightmares 3 further, as the city, I presume, the protagonists are trekking through is a location that they officially call the Spiral. But the biggest takeaway from this blurb is the adventure we're going to be partaking in as Lo and Alone. Personally, I'm very curious as to where Little Nightmares 3 will fall in the Little Nightmares timeline. There's been a lot of speculation that Alone is potentially the girl with the pigtails, who is also speculated to be the one who escaped the doctor's office with a spoon and ended up devoured by the leeches aboard the Maw. If any of this might be true, then I believe it's likely that Little Nightmares 3 is another prequel sequel of this sort. I hate these fucking prequel sequels. It'll probably fall somewhere before the events of the digital comics, Little Nightmares 2, and Little Nightmares. However, there's also the chance it could be taking place concurrently with Very Little Nightmares, or even come before that entry as well. On the off chance Little Nightmares 3 takes place after both the digital comics, Little Nightmares 2 and Little Nightmares, then I imagine it could serve as a branch sprouting from the conclusion of Six's story in the main game. After all, the continuation of the story following Six's successful prevail against the Maw doesn't necessarily mean that the continuation must continue with Six. In fact, it's plausible that Little Nightmares 3 could be taking place during any of those games, honestly. Assuming that it's not coming before or after or whatever, if assuming it doesn't neatly fall into a box, it could really just be happening at the same time as any of the other events in the other games. We're not really gonna know for certain, I guess, until Little Nightmares 3 is actually here, and then we can actually compare it that way. But that being said, I do find myself a little swayed at the idea of Alone being the same as the girl with the pigtails. I can't help setting my eyes on Little Nightmares 3, therefore coming after Very Little Nightmares and before the events of the comics Little Nightmares 2 and of course OG Little Nightmares. But that's just my opinion. That's just me. Now, I feel like the reason we have two protagonists who lean on each other like this once again is likely because people enjoy the dynamic of Six and Mono so much. So much so, in fact, that the developers have given us another pair to work with. In a way, I feel like this is making up for the devastation that was Six's betrayal of Mono. However, if these new developers are anything like the old ones, we should know better as Little Nightmares fans to hope for the best. Okay, we should know better than that. There's no guarantee our protagonists won't betray each other if the outcome works more in one or the other's favor. Plus, there's always the chance one of them won't survive, frankly, especially if the theory I mentioned earlier in the video is actually true. I really hope not, but if it is true, and I'm kind of believing it right now, like, that just sucks. But what do you think about that? What are your predictions for the fate of our protagonist? Do you think it's gonna be like Six and Mono all over again? That said, I'm most excited for the characterization of Lo and Alone, and I think especially Lo. I feel like there's a chance he's related somehow to the children from episode 6, especially since it appears like those children from that city, they seem to mostly have brown skin and dark hair, just like Lo. And while Lo clearly has wigs, like there's a chance he probably had a low fade just like the other kids. Based on all of that, it also gives me the impression that Lo, like the other boys, probably attended some kind of like institution in that burning city, like some kind of boarding school almost. And I get this impression because of the fact that they all wearing the same plain cotton shirt and overalls. Don't sit there like, Latrina, how do you know they're wearing cotton shirts? Hell else, it looked like cotton shirts. I can't really imagine how Lo and Alone ended up together, nor can I say that I believe we'll even get any information on that, honestly speaking, at least not right in Little Nightmares 3. And so for now, I think we'll just have to take their being together just at face value. Although I will say that personally, I kind of feel like they've known each other for a long time. I don't know why. It's just kind of a feeling I got. Like, they just give me like long time friend vibes. Let me know what y'all think about it though. Like, what do you look forward to seeing in Little Nightmares 3? What are your first impressions of Lo and Alone? What else? Do you think this game is the first time they've ever met, or do you also feel like they've probably known each other for a while? Better yet, what do y'all think about the names Lo and Alone in the first place? Because like from a writer's perspective, I feel like the thing about the Little Nightmares story, like as a whole, is that it's one of them kind of stories where it's like less is more, you know, like less is more. Like, it's one of those stories where the more you give, the worse it can get, in my opinion, that is. Because one of the selling points of the Little Nightmares universe is that it's very mysterious. Like, it's the mystique nature of it all that, like, draws you in and turns you every way but loose. Because it's like, you'll get bits and pieces of the world and the characters in it in such a way that gives you a slight idea as to what might be happening, but like not enough to make you feel like you ain't gotta do a lot of thinking, you know? Like, they don't tell you everything. For example, with the comics, where we get bits and pieces of how other children fared in the world of Little Nightmares, including previous protagonists like Six and Mono. In each episode, it told us enough about the world and the kind of characters in it to give us an idea, like, okay, so this just seems to be the way the world is in Little Nightmares, right? but not so much information that it's like, okay, forget Matt Pat. I can figure this shit out by myself. I don't need him. I can figure this shit out by myself. It's like, it's enough to invest us, but not so much as to spoil the fun. And to bring it back home a little, I prefer Lo's name because I feel like it's simple and, more importantly, vague. Like, really vague. What could Lo mean? Is it referring to a place? Is it his nickname? Is it like shorthand for his full name? A name like Logan or Louis or Marlo, Bartholomew? Like, it could be just about anything. But I feel like a name like Alone gives something away about her, like right off the bat. Like, in some way, she's probably a loner, some lone ranger who's just oh so used to being alone. A wallflower that happened to be picked up by a probably much more extroverted by comparison Lo, and now they travel through the spiral together and search for a way out of the nowhere because, you know, she's just so alone. Let me stop. I don't know. What do you guys think about all of this? Like, let me know in the comments below. That said, like, share, comment, subscribe, all the 9 miles YouTube shit. And all of you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful night.